I've known Gary, I guess, well over 50 years. Yes? We were casual friends for a few years, and then as teenagers we became very, very best of friends. And the different transitions that we passed through together very much molded our lives. We demonstrated against the Vietnam War. We were very sympathetic toward the civil rights movement. We merged into the counterculture of America, where there was all sorts of various theologies, philosophies, ideologies, and experiential movements to try to find deeper meaning, enlightenment, and to make sense out of what the world was doing at the time. After all, when we were just beginning our teens, President Kennedy was shot and killed, and the Vietnam War started raging. A few years later, Martin Luther King was shot and killed. Then for the young generation, Robert Kennedy was the only politician left who meant anything to us. He was shot and killed. And I just was at a peaceful demonstration in Grant Park in Chicago, just questioning the relevance of this war that I was about to possibly get drafted into, and was tear gassed and beaten by the clubs. Well, I wasn't actually beaten, but I was a fast runner. But I was tear gassed by club swinging police, who I was told were protecting my freedom. So Gary and I, we were looking for something meaningful and fulfilling. I remember hearing a statement by a great man that if one does not have an ideology that one is willing to die for, one really doesn't have anything very meaningful to live for. And we wanted to find that ideology, that ideal that we could die for and live for. We came to California during a summer vacation in high school, and we hitchhiked up and down the coast to some extent. We were sleeping on the sand in Laguna Beach until we were told that police were arresting everyone. So we were living a very simple life. Seeking. We went to the Bahamas once. We went to high school together, college together. Then one day, I was in New York City, and Gary called me on the phone and said, I have something I have to talk to you about. Come immediately to Cherry Hill, New Jersey. So I was a hitchhiker in those days. By the way, I hitchhiked here, but there's different ways of hitchhiking. These days I hitchhike by borrowing somebody's car and driving myself. But in those days we went like this, and whoever picked us up, we were at their mercy. So I went to Cherry Hill, and Gary said, Frank and myself are going to Europe for a summer vacation. You must come. I said, I have no money, and I have a job this summer in northern Illinois. I have to work and then go back to college. Gary said, well, I don't have any money either, but Frank is sponsoring both of us because he wants to go so bad that he's willing to sponsor both of us. I was convinced that God wanted me to go to Europe that summer. So we took I think it was $65, yes?
Something like that.
On Icelandic Airlines. We went to Iceland, and then onward to Luxembourg. And Frank was going to sponsor us, but it wasn't going to be very luxurious, because our first night in Luxembourg, And we woke up in the morning, it was a camping ground, and Frank came out of the tent so angry and despondent as a Swami. I cannot repeat the words he was shouting, but they were coming from his heart. I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "I've been robbed. All the money is gone. We have to all go back. We have our tickets back to New York. We should go back." He slung his backpack over his shoulder and said, "Come on." And Gary and I just stood there looking at each other. And he turned back. And we said, "Frank, we'll see you sometime later." And I remember I sat on the bank of this little creek and looked at the water. And I saw how the current was flowing according to a very natural course. And I remember thinking then, I'm completely free, like this water. I'm just going to flow according to destiny and God's will. I can't make any plans for myself because I don't know anybody except Gary. And I had no money. We had little, but very small. So we started to travel around. And at the beginning, Gary and I were very much into the counterculture scene in Amsterdam, at the Isle of Wight Rock Festival, in London. But something was happening to me. I remember at the Isle of Wight, it was the largest rock festival of our generation, much bigger than Woodstock, as far as the amount of people and the bands that were playing there. And I remember we were pretty close to the stage. And Jimi Hendrix was performing. That music coming out of those amplifiers was so loud. It seemed to be shaking the mountains, stirring the sea, and scattering the clouds. But there was a voice in my heart, a silent voice that seemed louder than all the music, that was calling me away from it all. What I felt I fit in so nicely, the counterculture. What I gave up my parents' lifestyle and accepted all kinds of mistreatment. Because in those days, if you had long hair, it was not a style. It was a radical political statement against the government and the establishment. And people didn't like that. And I was thinking that through this counterculture, we're going to bring peace into the world through love and through music. But I started to see the same things that we were revolting against in the establishment were very much present within the counterculture, just in a different dress, with a different hairstyle, and with different words. Selfishness, egotism, prejudices. I didn't know where I fit in. I loved it, but something was calling me away from it all. Just about a week or so later, Gary and I were in Surbiton, a suburb of London. And can you tell them, Gary? What
When we heard
happened?
Jimi Hendrix had
Can you
died.
sit here.
Oh,
and
gosh.
We'll speak to you.
Oh. Okay. What would you like me to tell them, Madash?
Yeah, well, tell them a little about Surbiton.
Well, like Radhanath had said, we hitchhiked, and at the Isle of Wight, we hitchhiked wherever fate took us, and we met